Hey there! So you're thinking of moving to St. Louis, Missouri? Well, you have found the right spot. I focus on everything there is you need to know about the market of moving to St. Louis, Missouri and the surrounding suburbs. So if you're new to my channel, make sure to click that subscribe button below. Today we're going to dive into the cost of living in St. Louis, Missouri. So if you're thinking about moving to the greater St. Louis, Missouri area, probably wondering, what's it going to cost me? What does that look like? I'm going to break it down to you today here in the year 2025. Cost of living in St. Louis, from housings to groceries, so you can decide if moving to the Midwest is really what you want, especially in that St. Louis area. St. Louis is known for its affordability and very rich history. It's also a big city with a lot of amenities. You can get a small town feel in some of those pocket neighborhoods as well. But let's get to the numbers, because I know that's what you really want. So number one, housing. Housing is one of the biggest pieces of moving to St. Louis, Missouri. It's one of the largest puzzle pieces that you might have fit into. They're more affordable than most cities in the United States. In 2025, average overall cost of a price of home in St. Louis City was $178,000. That's significantly lower than the national average. In neighborhoods like the Central West End, this number will trend higher because those are trendier, nicer homes, and that's about $350,000. So you have all the way down to 178 to 350, depending on what neighborhood that you choose to live in if you are moving here to St. Louis, Missouri. If you're like, no, I want to rent instead. Well, let's go through that. So a studio apartment averages $970. A one bedroom rent is average $1,100, and a two bedroom at $1,300. So compare that to Chicago, where rents are about 30% plus higher, in San Francisco, where they're just over double that. St. Louis, for a major city, is pretty affordable. Now let's talk about the county. So you have St. Louis City and you have St. Louis County. In St. Louis County, home prices are average closer to $260. So we said average was $178 in the city, $260 in the county. And it does reflect a diverse suburb like, Clayton, Florissant, these type of areas. And so rent will be roughly the same price that you'll find in the city. So just to reiterate, a studio apartment is $970, a one bedroom is $1,100, and then a two bedroom is about $1,300. So it does reflect the same in the county as it does in the city. Now let's talk about St. Charles County, because that's just a little bit further out if you're thinking of moving to St. Louis, because we are talking about suburbs as well. In St. Charles County, expect home prices to be about $350,000 on average, with a one bedroom that rents at about $1,600 average. So rent is going to be higher in St. Charles County, but it does offer new developments, like Fallon, at a lower cost of living than St. Louis. So it is what it is. Across all three, housing is generally 20% or more cheaper than the national average. So whether you decide to move to St. Louis City, St. Louis County, or St. Charles County, rent and housing is going to be about 20% lower than the national average. So that's just housing. Let's talk about utilities and everyday expenses, because you do have to live your life outside of paying rent and outside of paying your mortgage. And so utilities and daily costs, they're going to vary across the region. So in St. Louis City or County, utilities are typically about $200 a month for the homeowner, which is slightly above average in the area. While St. Charles is more affordable, you're looking at an average of $150 for utilities. So it is more expensive in the city and the county for your utilities than it is in St. Charles County. So groceries are consistent throughout those three regions. They are 1 to 5% below the national average. And that's just based off of like a gallon of milk and, a carton of eggs that we're talking about. So gasoline as well, because you do have to get places, is roughly 50 to 60 cents below the national average. So that's pretty good. And if you live in the city or the county of St. Louis, they do have public transit that you can use. St. Charles County typically does not offer any public transit, but you can get places on your bike if you really wanted to. Let's move on to the next one, healthcare. Healthcare is a plus here in St. Louis. We're a very big healthcare town. In St. Louis City, costs are 8.5% below the national average, with a doctor's visit averaging about $129. And then if you want to get your teeth checked, checkups are around $114. So St. Louis County mirrors this as well, with healthcare about 9.3% cheaper than the national average, which is not bad. St. Charles County is very similar as well, so all of that does align with, being a little less cost of living than most of the national average. And so Missouri does rank around the middle in healthcare affordability, which you You can't argue with that. That's pretty good. So if you're in St. Charles or St. Louis County, you're going to find Barnes Jewish, you're going to find Mercy, you're going to find different hospitals like that you can get your health care at. Income and affordability. How much do you need to live here in St. Louis comfortably? That's the number one question that you are probably asking. I keep saying the number one question. There's a lot of number one questions when we're talking about moving to a different area. So in St. Louis City, a single person needs about $45,000 annually or $65,000 for an affordable lifestyle with savings. So if you are a family of four, we're just averaging it out, you're a family of four, you probably need around $80,000 because the median household income is $50,000 with average salaries around $70,000. So in St. Louis County, so that was the city, in St. Louis County, I would say aim for about $50,000 if you're a single person with a median income of $62,000 if you want to live comfortably. And then we're talking about St. Charles County is slightly higher. You're needing about $48,000 if you're a single person or a median income of $71,000. And that does reflect on that growing job market as well. So the region's cost of living on just an index is 87.1 to 90, which means it's 10 to 12% below the national average. Again, the region's cost of living is 10 to 12% below the national average. Missouri's minimum wage is $13.75 per hour, but many jobs really do pay above that as well. So if you are thinking of moving to St. Louis, Missouri, whether it's in the city, the county, or St. Charles County, those are some of the numbers that you're going to look at. You are below the national average. You are going to find that it's very affordable to live here, and that you can do it as a single person all the way up to, a family of 4+. So if you have any specific questions on the cost of living here in St. Louis, Missouri, you can pop those in the chat below. You can also comment below or get my contact information if you're looking to move in 9 or 90 days. I'm here to help you. Call, text, or email. Thanks so much.